It's not that unusual for a lot of people who are working in a job to have one eye on that very attractive thing outside being called a consultant, breaking out, going out on your own and running your own business. And a lot of people who go there find it's not quite as straightforward as they thought. There's feast and famine. There's having one single large client that just ends up like being in a job. And then there's that constant grinding fear of where the next gig is going to come from. My guest today is Dan Gwalter. Dan is a former FTSE 100 technology leader. He's been a CTO, and he took that leap of faith himself. He decided to start a business and become a consultant. And like a lot of people, he learnt the hard way, but then the smart way. He went through all of the uncertainties, all of the false starts, but also all of the breakthroughs and successes. And along the way, he built what he calls the Fractional Formula, which is an operating system for you as a consultancy business. Today, Dan is going to walk through that formula. So if you are thinking about becoming a consultant or even just starting a business, or if you're already there and you're a bit fed up with the boom and bust, and you want more certainty, you want a better process around your business, this episode and Dan's advice is for you. Let's get into it. Hey, Dan, thank you for joining my show. Welcome to Build Your Edge. Today, we're talking about people who have these aspirations of going out on their own and becoming a consultant because it sounds grand, it sounds amazing, and it sounds easy. And I know that from your experience, you have found personally when you did it, it's not as straightforward as that. There are some tricks and there are some things that will catch you out, but there is also a very solid method that you can apply that will help you be successful as a consultant. So before we dive into your material, I'd love to hear about your journey because I know that you are CTO, you've been at FTSE 100 companies, you've got a great track record behind you, but you decided to do that very thing, jump out, become a consultant. What was that like for you? What triggered you to even make that decision?
Um, I guess before I begin, thanks so much for having me on today. In terms of my journey, in the most part, it was a very traditional journey. I kind of dropped into technology thinking that that's where it was all at, and that's what I wanted to do. I climbed the ladder ridiculously quickly. Um, Found myself in an equity situation that took some time to complete, and I kind of got three-quarters of the way through, and I realized that I'd been wearing this corporate mask, if you like. I talk to people about this a lot. We behave as we think the organization wants us to behave, and we if you're smart, what you realize at some point is that's not you. And the more I did
Yeah.
it, the further away from me I got. And so at an opportune moment, once the equity had run its course, I decided that I was gonna branch out on my own and try and do things differently. And that was where my real journey began. My corporate life now is almost a distant memory. I still have good connections there. I still speak to people regularly, but I don't recognize that person anymore. And ironically, on the flip side, if I go out to lunch with people that I used to work with, they don't recognize me in the same way. I've
Mm-hmm.
managed to find who I am and actually enjoy that journey. So yeah, that was the beginning part. Um,
But just on that briefly, if someone's listening to that and they might be thinking immediately, well, yeah, but you're lucky, right? You got some equity. Loads of people get equity, but it never kind of lands, it never transpires. It's just a bit of a wish. You were lucky in a sense. It came through and you got some cash.
yeah,
Did that help?
no, I'm not going to labor it too much. If you want to make if you want to make a small fortune, take a large fortune and then go through a divorce. Um,
Okay.
and that in a nutshell summarizes that position. I think the equity basically worked out at net neutral. by the end of that
Right.
process. So,
Okay. Okay.
I definitely wasn't silver spoon. I definitely didn't have a luxurious position where I didn't have to work or I didn't have to earn money. In fact, from the day that I left corporate life, I had to be making revenue inside 4 weeks. Otherwise,
Got it.
there would have
Got it.
been a disaster.
Yeah. So it wasn't like some magic safety net that just made that jump easier.
Oh, I wish it was genuinely.
Right.
It might have made the mental transition a little bit easier. Um, but no, it, there was no lucky break. Somebody gifted me an opportunity to sit on my backside for 6 months and work this out.
Right. So you left the corporate gig, landed into this holy hell, I've now got to make this work situation. What was that first, yeah, from a consulting point of view, what was that first month, 6 months like?
Terrifying, I think is the only way I could describe it. It's the reality jolt. It's easy from inside corporate life because we hire consultants, we hire contractors, we see the sums of money involved. It's easy to assume that they're just bobbling along on a wave, and
Yeah.
it's a walk in the park. The reality jolt, I guess, for me was this: I'd built this belief in my head. I'd hit the top of my tree. Everybody knew who I was. Everybody knew what I did. I was well regarded, dare I say, even respected in many ways. And so in my head, it was simply a case of, hi, I'm here. Let's do some amazing work together. And the reality jolt is that is a dream. That doesn't,
So you expected the minute you put your hand up and went, all right, guys, here I am, I'm a consultant, that the door would
yeah.
just open with people flooding through going, have my money, please help me out.
In hindsight, when you put it like that, Jeremy, yeah, it sounds a little bit foolhardy.
Yeah.
But that is basically where I was. And maybe I was a little bit burnt out and a little bit frazzled at the time of thinking. But I genuinely thought, oh, I'll just hop on LinkedIn and wave my hands about a bit and tell them how good I am.
Watch the leads roll in.
And
Yeah.
I will be smothered in leads, so many leads that I'll have to, recruit people in week 3. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's unless you are incredibly lucky, there is a type of individual for whom that does happen, but what they never realize is what they did that created that opportunity. And spoiler alert, those people that have always been prolific networkers tend to find that opportunity happens. I wasn't.
Right.
For me in corporate life, my organization used to send me all around the country to these networking events, and I chose my words very carefully. I was the guy that was either hiding in the toilets or outside with the smokers, because
Okay.
because the thought of small talk and hobnobbing with people that I'd never met under the auspice of probably going to get pitched some vendor-based solution
Yeah.
just drained the life out of me. So no, I didn't have a big strong network to fall back on. I crashed into the consulting landscape on day one, and by the end of week 1, I was in, terror, panic.
Tears.
Yeah, it was it was the first of many times that my wife said to me, "Do you think you probably ought to just go and get a job?"
Hmm.
And in
Hmm.
year one, and it's definitely in year one, she said that on more than one occasion. Because it was totally unpredictable. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I didn't have a structure or anything to fall back on. I was just basically trying a bit of everything based on what I could see other people doing, and that's where the chaos begins.
Right. And I don't want to be sexist here, but being a man, the more that your wife says to you, shouldn't you go get a job? You become more determined, don't you? That, no, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to see this through. Just watch. But in the back of your head, you've got that kind of, yeah, she's probably right.
It's a funny thing. Look, I'm a 50-year-old with clear ADHD. I've known this for 30 years. One of the byproducts of that is strong self-belief, like
Right.
belligerent self-belief. And if there's one thing guaranteed to kick that self-belief up a gear, it's somebody telling you that you can't do it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, for every time that I was advised, don't you think you ought to get a job because this is real life that we're messing around with here? We've got kids and house and
Yeah.
stuff to pay
Yeah.
for. For every time that came up, I was able to go hyper focused and
Hmm.
really, generate some revenue that made the topic go away again. But
Yeah.
I guess my funniest observation, I remember being sat in an executive boardroom saying I wanted more freedom and flexibility. I was talking to the CEO that I was resigning from. He said, why are you doing it? Because, you've had a great journey here. You've been fantastic. I'm not surprised, but I need to understand. And I said, because I remember saying to her, I just want more freedom and flexibility. I don't want to be constrained in this sort of like, I say notionally Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, but it never was. It was more like seven in the morning till 8 p.m.
Yeah.
And then I resigned. And obviously, as a senior executive, you get put on garden leave immediately. And so what I had on the very next day was an absolute abundance of freedom and flexibility, more freedom and flexibility than I knew what to do with. And by the end of week one, what I realized was that lack of that lack of structure, that lack of process, that lack of architecture, if you like, that corporate life gives you. When you take all that away, yeah, you get exactly what you wanted, freedom and flexibility. But on the other side of that, not very far behind it, is chaos and uncertainty.
Right.
And that was really the beginning of my journey into learning that freedom and flexibility is to be taken in small doses. And you've got to create some form of structure for yourself. Otherwise, things get messy very quickly.
And that's what we're going to talk about today, isn't it? It's about yeah, sure, you want this freedom and you believe that you have got some skills or something to offer that people are going to buy from you, essentially. But without that framework around you, without those processes and without that operating system almost,
Mhm.
you're making it much more difficult for yourself. And you found, I know from talking to you, that once you had worked that out, you went up and down. It wasn't plain sailing, and you worked it out along the way. And now you spend your time coaching people who are either there already or who want to go there, and you help them understand that operating system.
Yeah.
What sort of people do you work with, and at a very high level, what do you do with them?
So this part of my journey, certainly the coaching side, began because I said something relatively horrible on LinkedIn. And the comment I made was, if you're using the word fractional and you've got one client and it's on day rate and it's going to last 6 months, you're not fractional and you're walking a dangerous path. And it genuinely came from a position of compassion and care and love for the market. But what I was really saying was, if you're not doing anything to perpetuate your own success, then everything is an accident. And if you're me,
Wh-
well, you think about it. A lot of people, those first few gigs that you get as a solopreneur, and it doesn't matter what we call ourselves, the list is long and endless and it will continue to
Yeah,
grow,
yeah.
ranging from freelancer through to fractional. The first few gigs that most people get are entirely based on referrals. And in the last 3 years, I've spoken to over 1,000 solopreneurs. I've in calls like this, and they all say the same thing. I got a couple of early referrals. It went really well. I thought I was king of the hill, and then the referrals dried up. And I go, when you were getting those referrals, did you ever stop and think, I never created that? Because that was my wake up call.
Mm.
I walked the same path. I got a nice referral from somebody that I used to work with, didn't stop and think about it, jumped in because I wanted to generate revenue. I got about 6 months into the engagement when it dawned on me that I had done the absolute sum total of zero to create that piece of business for myself. I just happened to
It
be,
had happened to you, didn't it?
yeah,
Really, you didn't make it. It happened to you, luckily. But
luckily, because it kept me off the streets. It kept a roof over my family's head and food on the table, as they say. But once you've thought to yourself, actually, my entire business is 100% dependent on somebody else remembering that I exist at the right moment in time. That's the turning
hmm
point for most consultants when they wake up and they go, I am not running a consultancy here. I'm running a lucky venture. And some people, don't be wrong, I've met a few people that have been doing that for 10 plus years. But again, as with the former narrative, they have an attribute. They are prolific networkers and they just don't realize that that's what's doing it. For
right.
me,
So that yeah, so that they're doing it. The thing that you described as being lucky almost that you had a referral, they are doing also accidentally without knowing, but they are doing it, and that's the difference.
yeah, yeah, they are, you know, when you leave corporate life, you've got credibility, you've got a network of people around you that know exactly who you are and what you do. And they become your referral partners, if you like, for want of a
Yeah.
nicer, more elegant phrase. And when you disappear inside an engagement and you stop all of that networking that you were doing in corporate life because you're busy, that network starts to cool down.
hmm
So when you pop up 6 months later in panic mode because that engagement has ended, you're back to square one. You're starting to build again. You're starting to create visibility. You're starting to, put your name about, as it were. The people that are continuously successful never stop the networking side of the equation. Even if they do it just a small amount, they do it enough to maintain visibility. And so for me, the turning point in my logic, in my understanding was I need to perpetually create visibility. And I remember on a whiteboard sort of over there with my wife explaining it and going, it's a flywheel. Visibility is a
Right.
flywheel. If you keep it moving, it's easy. If you let it slow down and stop, it takes a lot of effort. And if you loiter on LinkedIn for more than 2 or 3 months, you'll see the same people appear, become hyperactive, then disappear, normally after a congratulations announcement. They
Yep.
disappear for a few months and then they pop up again and they go hyperactive and then they disappear again. And they go, that's the visual version of the feast and famine cycle. You can avoid it when you know how to create client, not by accident. You can avoid it when you know how to keep your visibility up. But most people, and me included, okay, look, if there are any mistakes, if anyone's listening and you can think of mistakes in the consulting landscape, I've probably made them on several occasions and
Right.
learned the hard way. But most people coming into the industry, wanting to work for themselves, wanting to create their own business, the first point of realization is you just don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, and also listening to you, it seems that you may be lucky. You may get a gig for 6 months or a year or whatever it happens to be. And even if people know you, when that ends and you put your hand up and go, "Hey, I'm free," you're trusting that the network that you have built up have actually got something available and suitable for you now.
Yep.
Because if they haven't, you're not going to get it.
People make this assumption. There's a there's a human condition called object permanence, which in essence suggests that the moment you stop thinking about something, the thing itself never changes until you think about it again. There's a lot of people in the world that suffer with object permanence. People do it with regards to their own networks. So you talk to the same group of maybe 20 or 30 people all the time, and then you stop talking to them and you go off and do your own thing. When you pop up 6 months later, your natural assumption is they are the same people doing the same thing with the same overall situation. But the reality is that's not true. The reality is they all kept moving. They all, progressed in their careers, changed jobs. Some of them even, dare I
Yep.
say it, retired.
Yep.
Um, and so you come back and you now got to learn what each of their positions is and whether they're relevant and whether they're able to help or whether they've got anything that's useful for you. And so you're starting from scratch. You're almost rebuilding your network every single time you start that activity versus the alternative, which when we say it like this seems quite obvious, which is just don't stop networking with them in the first place. There you go.
Right. Now you've built, you call it the fractional formula.
Yep.
Um, and I liken it to an operating system because it is literally the system that sits underneath your business and you and all of the things that you can do. It's the machine and the engine underneath, which just keeps running,
Hmm.
that helps somebody build up and sustain a consulting business. So I'd love to step with that through that with you at a really high level. We won't cover everything because I appreciate that there's a lot of material, but we'll just go through a few key points. The first one I'd love to talk about is understanding your ideal customer profile, which if someone doesn't know what that is, but it's who are the people that I want to work with and why. So can you talk me through why it's important to understand who your ICP is?
Yeah, sure. if you if you look at any if you look at any content at all, business content written by consultants, I would say 90% of it is written by a consultant in their own voice about a topic that they're passionate about. And that's because we're intelligent, experienced people. And so for me as a technology guy, I would write about technical debt, I would write about frameworks, I'd write about transformations. I see it now, but everyone's writing about AI from a
Yeah.
technology perspective. But in my experience, when speaking to potential clients, what I realized really early on was potential clients would come to me, and the things that they were saying to me weren't problems as such. They were the symptoms of the problems as seen by them. And so I had this wake up call of, oh my God, it's like watching an Englishman and a Frenchman speaking to each other in their native tongue. Neither really understands what's being said. I've got a vague idea, maybe because of some GCSE French, but I'm not fluent by any stretch. And that's what consultants and clients are doing all of the time by accident without ever realizing it. And so when I think about ideal customer profile, the biggest outcome of that, it's not just about knowing, what industry, what size of organization, what stage of growth, etc. They're the most basic of parameters. It's also about understanding how the customer themselves would position the problem that you understand, because they very rarely articulate it in your terminology. Most most executives that I've ever worked with, that I've ever met, three big headlines: reduce cost, increase revenue, manage risk. And so articulating the symptoms of the problems through those lenses means that if you're able to do that, suddenly you've just become relevant to them.
So
Now,
no one comes to you and says, "Hey, please sort out my technical debt."
never, never in a,
Right.
never. Oh God, I wish in those early days they did, because that was my, when I went to market as a consultant, I was the guy that solved technical debt for scale ups.
Right.
The funny thing is, the only people that ever understood what that actually meant was people just like me. And so if I
The
wrote,
people, the people creating the technical debt,
yeah,
actually. Yeah.
so so I'd write content about technical debt, and I'd get inundated with CTOs, lead engineers, quality people, project people saying, "Oh, fantastic piece of content, Dan, really resonated." Not one of them has got a budget or an inkling to hire me. And then I go and talk to CEOs, and they say to me, "I'm just so sick of speaking to our engineers, and every time I speak to them, they say I need three more engineers, and I don't even know what the engineers we've got are actually doing, but everything feels like it's slowing down." And that became my symptom set. I remember the first person that ever said that to me, and all of those sentences came from one person. And I remember listening to it going, I would never have said that. Though
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
wouldn't have been part of my narrative. What I realized was the moment I lent into that narrative and I started talking to people in their own language, in at their own point of understanding, pain rather than problem, suddenly those same people started to feel like they'd been heard and they'd been understood, and that just maybe Dan might be somebody that can help move us down the line.
Yeah.
And that, so for me, ideal customer profile, what's the pain that, as they would articulate it, what's the value you create, what's the buyer's process, and I guess most importantly, what's the trigger? Because I see a lot of consultants trying to sell services that don't really address a very big pain, or if they do address a big pain, they're addressing a pain that is not hurting right now. And I look at it and
Got
go,
it.
look, Jeremy, you've been in corporates as well.
Yeah.
We live with all sorts of problems that we're not trying to actively solve because they're just not that important right now. And so if you're a consultant and you're designing services that address those smaller problems around the outside, it's a really tough thing to try and monetize against. Whereas if you're the guy that solves the problem that everybody is thinking about right now in a given organization, it's a walk in it becomes a walk in the park.
So what I'm hearing is ICP is typically the profile of a customer, and it's clearly
Yes.
important. But when you were talking, what I picked up was it's not necessarily about the customer, it's about the problem that they are experiencing and then speaking that language, but also speaking to the right people. Because as you say, if you speak to a lead engineer who loves what you're talking about, they've got they can't hire you, right? So it's interesting, but it's not of any value. But if you can identify that it's the CEO that is seeing the effects of the problem and speak their language, they're the kind of, they have the buying power, right? They can come to you and say, come on in, Dan, and sort out this problem for me.
Yeah, when I first started doing this, my observation, so, and I'm seeing it again now, it's starting to become more and more prolific. There's one version of the fractional avatar, if you like, that is fractional role within an organization. So fractional CTO, we use that as an example. That best fits organizations that either don't have the demand or the capital to support a full-time CTO. And therefore, the
Yep.
tenure of that role is going to be, a number of months until you've got them to a point where they need a full-time equivalent. The challenge for me is there's less of those types of roles than there are organizations that have the problem that I understand. And so for me, I I woke up and went, actually, I have never had a client that didn't have technology leadership in play. Yeah, I'm a technology leader. If I went down the fractional role within an organization type route, most people that I would speak to would say, actually, we've got a CTO.
We've got one of them already. We don't need you.
And so I changed my focus away from being that job title within the organization to being quite often a supporting party for the existing job title within the organization, or an extension of capacity, or a different skill set that maybe they didn't yet have. And a lot of that ideal customer profile thinking was, actually, is my actual customer the CEO? Or is my customer somebody just like me inside the organization that doesn't have this skill set? Because the narrative changes quite dramatically,
Right. Of course. Yeah.
and your approach changes. Because trust me, when you walk into any organization, and I've had chairmen that have introduced me into organizations, and you turn up on day one and you find the clone version of you that isn't quite, doesn't have the full skill set or doesn't have the capacity, there is a natural fear, whether it's spoken or unspoken, there's a natural fear that you're there to get rid of them.
Hmm.
And so for me, when I know that that's the situation, when I know there's an incumbent technology leader that there's been no conversation to get rid of, it's just a we need this problem solving. I have to work twice as hard to A, convince them that I'm not here as an axe man. B, my sole ambition is to make them the hero of this situation. I don't need the extra credibility boost of saying, hey, look at all
Right.
the wonderful things I've done. My goal is to work with them to help them achieve the outcome that they desire, and then to walk away from that situation. And so I only got that logic by really truly modeling my ideal customer profiles at that level. Now, fun fact, over the last 3 years, as I say, I've spoken to well over 1,000 people. The people that are not succeeding, or the people that are struggling, or the people that are inconsistent in their business outcomes, vast majority of times, 9 times out of 10, it's a weakness in the ideal customer profile. And
Right.
I can pick it up. I hate the fact that I can do it, but I can pick it up inside 2 minutes. And I say to people, just, very, very surreptitiously, I say, who do you work with? And when that list rambles,
Right.
and everybody,
Everyone and anyone who
yeah,
have me.
you can't, you can't do it. You
Yeah.
genuinely can't. At a very basic level, if I was sat inside a financial services organization selecting a vendor to deliver, let's say, a CRM, I want a vendor that's got experience in financial services, because they'll understand the regulation, they'll understand the competition, they'll understand the environment, the the diligence environment that's in play. So if somebody comes in from, I don't know, retail, they could be the best CRM implementer on the planet, but they don't even get noticed because there's no point of relevance there. I can't make the jump to see a relevance there. And that's why you can't, it doesn't matter how good you are, you can't address such a broad spectrum. You don't create relevance.
Right. And coming back to that incumbent,
Mm.
if I put myself in that situation, let's imagine that I'm a CTO for argument's sake, and I know that I've got this burning problem over here, and I don't have the experience or the time or something, and my team, when I look around, don't really. What's your message to me? Because presumably you're going to say, I've got this. Let me run at that. You focus on your other things. I've got this. I'll sort it for you and hand you back a nicely wrapped up, completed solution. I would imagine that CTO would then welcome you in with open arms.
In almost every situation where I've worked alongside an incumbent version of me, when I've actually been able to have the conversation with them, there is an immediate sense of relief.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
The answer that
Double
I,
relief, right? Double relief because you're not here to take my job and you're going to remove a problem.
yes. And a lot of the time, these problems, if you think about technical debt as an example, it's hyper visible to that person. They know they are managing through treacle on a day-to-day basis. They know the risks inside their architecture. They know the stress and the frustration of trying to justify additional budget when it's not going to create additional output.
Yep.
When I offer some form of solution to that, it gets received in a lot of different ways. There's a very personal way, you're going to take some of the pressure off of me. You're going to make my life better. On the other side of the equation, there's a weird progress type outcome where an incumbent CTO will see that actually I'm willing to stand in front of an executive team and demonstrate exactly why this is important, even if they've been trying to do that for the last 18 months and haven't
Right.
succeeded. And
Yep.
so my narrative will be that sometimes you just need outside eyes with credibility to stand up in front of your executive team and say, that thing that he's been saying to you for the last 2 years that you've been dismissing as irrelevant, it's actually the single most important thing that you need to focus on right now
Yeah.
if you
He
want to
he was
achieve your
right, or she was
target.
right.
They were
Yes. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And I've had that on so many occasions where people say to me, this isn't a news story, Dan. So and so has been saying this for months. We didn't buy into it. I go,
Mhm.
well, now you've got two of us saying it. And so your
Mhm.
choice,
Mhm.
if you want to hit this big stretchy target that you've set for yourself and you're already worried about, you probably ought to deal with this. And it's not,
Mhm.
in my instance, it was never as invasive or as intrusive as people thought it was, which made life a lot easier.
And that leads you on to the second big area that you talk about, which is understanding what you offer,
Yeah.
understanding what services you actually bring.
There's a it's a very strange phenomenon. If I look at the recruited industry, so if I look at perm, interim, and contract, if you actually look at it as an adult, there's insurance for the employer built in right from the very, very beginning of that process. You've got headhunters, recruiters, talent acquisition teams, vetting CVs iteratively to try and find a point of credibility. And then you've got interview process, which is, often quite testy. And then even if once you've got to contract, there's a probation period.
Yep.
If you squish all that stuff together and look at it for a bit of a squinty eye, what you realize is that's nothing more complicated than insurance risk mitigation for the employer. Yet over here in the consulting landscape, that doesn't exist. And so what I see is new consultants go to market and they go, I'm going to be a fractional CTO. It's going to cost, let's round numbers, £10,000 a
Yep.
month.
Yep.
Most executives with any form of intelligence look at that arrangement and go, it's 120 grand exposure
Mhm.
without insurance. And suddenly their natural risk mitigation kicks in, which in essence, it just slows the process. So I've seen some of the best opportunities at that type of scale, 150 up to 300,000 disappear off into the long grass because now internally they're like, well, how do we know this guy is going to be here in a year's time? Or how do we know he's as good as he says he is? Where's the point of proof? Where's the reference? So I looked at that when actually the problem is not whether I'm good or I'm not, it's risk mitigation. I have not yet built enough trust and enough credibility with my client in order to sell a product of that value to them. And so for me, when I think about products and services, I look at what can I provide to a client at a much smaller value, something that's not going to trigger alarm bells in the executive's mindset. And so for me, we refer to them as diagnostic products, but due diligence, health check, discovery, strategy sessions, those types of products that take somewhere between 3 and 5 days to deliver and probably never cost any more than say 10 to 15K.
Yep.
Well, they're low risk,
Yep.
but they also have a huge upside benefit to both parties. To the client, they bring clarity. When you've done a few sort of 30-minute discovery calls with clients, what you'll find is that clients come at you with an understanding of what they think the problem is. It's very difficult to put an accurate price on solving that because as the consultant, you're not entirely sure that is actually the problem. And so most projects begin with some form of phase zero. We're going to do
Yep.
we're going to
Yep.
do some analysis, and I'm just going to make sure that that thing you've said is actually correct, and then we'll go and solve it, phase zero. And so all I really did was I separated the phase zero out and said, if you want price certainty on the big thing, then we do this at this cost. The output of that will be absolute certainty. I'm going to I'm going to dive deep into the organization for a very short period of time. I'm going to assess the situation. I'm going to come back to you with, observations, recommendations, a plan for execution, and a total cost. And that will cost you this. Now, the benefit for me is twofold. I get a head start on the future thing, but I also get to work with that client for real. Not just like this on a Zoom call. I get to go into the office, I get to speak to them, they get to meet me, they get to understand how I work, what I think about, what the model is, what does it look like. They understand my credibility. And as trust accelerators go, you can't get better than
Hmm.
that. And so the most common
Especially if
outcome,
you deliver what you said you would at the very beginning,
yeah,
right? Here is your thing. I understand the problem. That's your core problem. This is the route forward.
yeah. I've lost count of the number of times that I've gone into organizations to look at problem A only to discover that problem B sits on top of it and is fundamentally more important. And that's been the thing that we've gone on and solved.
Yeah.
But the most common conversation that happens at the end of that discovery period is clients come back to me and they say, that was really awesome. Is there a world where you could deliver the outcome based on this? What would that look like now? And so for me, it overcame the biggest problem in consulting, which is, for anybody listening, you hate knocking on doors. You hate the, hi, I'm Dan. I do this thing. Do you want to buy it? And rinse,
Hmm.
repeat indefinitely. I didn't have to do that. All I had to do was talk to people about a pain and a problem that I understood, allow that to flow into a discovery, and then they would buy in a pull from me the solution to that outcome. And so that became my model. When I think about products and services, it's something in the middle price range that leads into something high. And that high could be fractional role within the organization. It could be a fractional project, so an execution, or it could be a retained advisory if they've got the capacity and the capability internally to deliver the outcome.
And that's what they call land and expand, isn't it? Where you land for something very small and specific. You prove
Mm.
yourself and then you naturally expand into the organization rather than, I would imagine a lot of people might go, I don't know what the numbers are, right? Let's just pick a wild number, 500K. I want a 500K consultancy gig. Trying to sell that is super hard.
Yep.
But if you try and sell a 10, 15K, it's relatively easy. And as you've described, you may then be handed the 500K because you've been able to prove yourself and both parties have learned each other.
Yeah, look, most people that I speak to say that they want to be a retained advisor. And I don't have good news stories for people on that front because retained advisor is a trusted position. It's a partnership position. There's no way on earth you can ping somebody a message on LinkedIn and become a retained advisor in the next 3 weeks. It's a fallacy to think that that could ever
Yeah.
happen. So you build towards that. If ultimately your goal with every single one of your clients is to leave them better than you found them, that exit route differs. Some clients get partway through that journey and they go, actually, we've got this. You've been amazing. Thank you so much. Others go, this has been really great. How do we retain enough of you that we don't make the same mistakes again? And
Please
there's
don't
your,
leave us. Yeah.
yeah. And I jokingly, and I've said it to some of my clients, I've jokingly referred to retained advisory as insurance for your business. You get
Yeah.
unlimited access to somebody that knows what this looks like, knows where the pros and cons are, and can guide you safely without the full-time headcount. And normally what happens is when you take on full-time headcount, you immediately deploy them into something so time consuming and onerous that they stop doing oversight anyway.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where I get to.
So, this is such sound. I'm going to call it basic advice. I mean, I don't mean to diminish it, but like when you hear it, it's like, yeah, why wouldn't I do that? If I'm a consultant, why wouldn't I do these things? It's so straightforward. The third part that you talk about is being consistently seen by the right people.
Mhm.
What does that mean? If I'm a consultant, I've got my business, what does that mean?
If I put it into the context of LinkedIn, because I see this all the time, people, at least once a week, you'll see somebody on LinkedIn announce to the world that they're starting a new venture on their own.
Yeah.
And there's the big fanfare, and all of their ex-colleagues come out and give thumbs up on their posts, and it's fantastic. But the problem with it is what most people do is they copy what they see. That's human nature. We all copy what we can see. And so if you take
Or
link,
what ChatGPT gave us.
yeah,
Hmm.
um, more on that on another episode. Um,
Yes.
what most people do is they look at LinkedIn and they see this abundance of content. They see an abundance of consultants writing clever things, and they think that's how clients are created. And so what I see happen is most new consultants start out by creating 5 pieces of content a week, and they believe that clients will come off the back of that. Fun facts and a genuine spoiler alert: clients do not come from content.
Hmm.
It's not what it's not its purpose, and it's not whether your content's good, bad, or indifferent. It's not whether the algorithm loves or hates you. It's just not what happens. It doesn't work like that. What
Why is
people,
that, Danny? Is that because we've talked a lot about the people who actually buy from you. Is
Mhm.
it because they're simply not reading it, or because the message is wrong? Like,
we
what's
don't.
behind that?
It's it, LinkedIn is a platform full of well-written nursery rhymes, and I say that because I create them on a daily basis.
Hmm.
1,000 characters is the sweet spot for a piece of content to perform well. You're not going to write War and Peace in 1,000 characters. You're definitely not going to demonstrate professional credibility in 1,000 characters. So the thought that 1,000 characters could unlock an opportunity to use your 300 to 500,000 pound consulting gig, it's never going to happen.
Hmm. Hmm.
But because you can't see what else goes on behind the scenes. And so if I look at when I talk about structure and discipline and I actually refer to them as micro habits, it's born of me saying to people, talk to me about your day as a consultant without clients. What are you actually doing? And I hear it, I write a bit of content, I might connect to a few people, I might send a few messages, and it's all a little bit like
Mm.
fireworks going off. That's back to that sort of abundance of flexibility and freedom equating to chaos. I said, well, you've got to understand your LinkedIn profile is your shop window, not your digital CV. It's there to serve a purpose. It's there to grab hold of your ideal customer and make them see that you are worth talking to. And it will do that. And I give a lot of weight on this session. Banner, headline, about section has to talk to them, not you. It's not a dumping ground for job titles. It's not a place to try and be smart. It's a place just to show that you know what they're going through. If that's right, your content will drive people towards your profile will drive people towards you. But in order to make that work, you have to you have to build your network intently. There has to be purpose behind it. It's not a numbers game anymore. The era of land grabbing followers died on LinkedIn. It died 2 years ago. It was quite recent. Today, all I want inside my network is potential ideal customers, peer group, and a few relevant what I call tribe. They're the weird and wonderful folk that support everything that you do and you get on well with them, but you'll probably never sell them anything. Everybody else I don't want in my network because it doesn't serve a purpose. It dilutes the overall effect. And so for me, every single day we talk about, discipline and habit and structure. Every single day I am finding a number of relevant people to add into my network. And that's great. But then I say to people, okay, let's say for argument's sake, you've got a network of 6,000 people. Now what? Oh, well, it
Hmm.
doesn't matter because I've got 6,000 people and they're all reading my content. No, they're not.
Hmm.
Less than 20% of your network sees any of your content, yet alone all of it. So what are you doing? Well, I don't know now is normally the answer. And so, well, look, here's a strange idea. You reached out to these people, you connected to them, they accepted your connection request, which means they, fact one, they don't think that you're an arsehole.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But now you've ignored them completely. That's the equivalent of walking up to somebody in a networking event, shaking their hand, saying your name, and then wandering off. you're not going to create business. So for me, every single day, I'm starting conversations with the people that accepted my connection request yesterday or the people that connected to me yesterday. And there begins that process of recognizing that the thing you do over here creates a conversation, creates a meeting, creates a client. And if you have got all of the right components in place, you can do that on repeat, regardless of whether you're working or you're not working. The only thing that ever changes inside my model is the scale of the model. If I lost all of my clients and I was sat staring at a potential 0 month, then the front end of that process would be big. I would be using the maximum number of connection requests that I was
I
allowed
see what you
week to
mean.
week
Yeah. Yeah.
because the it's a funnel, right? People at the
Yeah.
top have to work their way through. If if I'm at capacity, then I'm sending out far less because I can't actually keep up with the demand that it creates downstream. And so it becomes quite a fluid model based on what I'm trying to achieve. Am I trying to maintain visibility or am I trying to win clients? Where am I sat in that journey? Does that make sense?
So yeah, it does completely. And a few things. Yeah, 'twas ever thus, wasn't it? That vanity metrics are pointless.
Yeah.
And so, people kind of go, how many likes did my piece of content get? And, it's nice, but it doesn't mean anything. And I think you very eloquently put that it's okay to be much more focused, look at the right things and create those connections and have proper conversations. That's way more meaningful. And I know that when you work with your clients, and we won't go through it today because it's part of your secret sauce, but when you work through them, you describe what that machine looks like and what the valve is that you open up and close at the beginning to make sure that that content flows through.
Yeah. So a couple of points there. In terms of the program itself, over 10 weeks, there are 3 weeks of foundational work. So ideal customer profile, products and services, LinkedIn profile. Then we move into demand generation, which is all about habit stacking. I want people to get to a point where they walk into their office on a Monday morning, they know exactly what they need to be doing Monday through Friday in order to create success.
Yeah.
And that's all I ask of my clients. And I'm quite, this isn't a program for everybody. It's a program for people that want to move and want to get this done. And so one of the agreements is I'm going to show you exactly what this looks like. I need commitment from you that you are going to execute that model because if you don't, I can't guarantee your success. So
Yeah.
that's that side of the equation. On the whole vanity metrics, I find it quite intriguing that people look at LinkedIn content and think that it's revenue generating.
Mm,
Look, I understand why YouTube, as an example, is as popular for content creation. For starters, YouTube themselves pay you. And so if you take someone like Angry Ginge, recently more famous than normal, um, millions of views on every single one of his videos creates an income stream for him and a good income stream at that. But that's
yep.
not what LinkedIn doesn't pay per view. And so for me, it's about really understanding what an impression is. So everyone bangs on about, my post got X number of impressions. And I go, that's not even views. An impression is simply the number of times that LinkedIn put your content on a feed. Doesn't mean it was seen, doesn't mean it was even on screen. It was on the feed. It could have been seen. And
So it
so,
was available for somebody to at least scroll past. But
yes,
even then, they may not have stopped on your content and consumed it.
yeah.
And
Now,
they may not have picked up their device today. Therefore, that impression is valueless.
it's a valueless impression. Exactly.
Yep.
So for me, impressions, they're inconsistent. They're not always accurate. There's no correlation between impressions and clients or impressions and conversations. And in fact, if I take my highest performing post of all time, which I think got, as of today, has probably got somewhere in the region of 2 million plus impressions, it
Wow.
did not create a single client
Right.
because there's a strange reverse logic here. If your post achieved ridiculous, pseudo virality, the chances are it was broad, non-specific, and appealed to the masses.
Got it.
The posts that are most likely to create the opportunity to create a client are hyper specific. I love it when somebody drops into my DMs and says, that post you wrote this morning, it felt like a personal attack.
It was me. Yeah.
You just described my last week. And
Yeah.
that for me is perfect because I look at it, I can look back at the post and go, I know exactly what you're going through, and here's the conversation. But a post that's got, 10,000 thumbs up emoji, great post, Dan, spreading all around the world. You can't even mine that post for information to see whether there was anybody relevant in it.
Yeah.
Once you get past about 1,000 likes and comments, it's impossible to mine. So for me, the post that I like the best, and it sounds really sad and nerdy, I like the posts that get like 20
One.
likes.
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
can scroll the list and I go, I know who you are because I saw you yesterday liking this and the day before liking this. Let's have a chat.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that leads me. So a couple of things I was hearing there is, I think if you're a consultant, especially if you're quite new in, you're focused very much on the doing the work piece, that gig that you get that's going to pay you, yeah, whatever money it is.
Mhm.
But actually, a lot of the act of being a consultant is everything that goes around that in order to make that happen. And I think what I'm hearing from you is that that's what people tend to ignore. And that brings us on to the next piece, which is about operating rhythm. And it's about operating your consultancy as a business instead of a series of emergencies. And I can imagine that if I haven't planned my business correctly, you touched on it earlier on, like I get a gig, I work on it, I end, now what?
Yep. I think there are so many different bits and pieces that go into that segment. Yeah, if I look at how do you manage the client that you've got, there are elements that I see people do very, very well. There are elements that I see people do very, very badly. Example, if the only time you talk to your client about the relationship itself is at the end of the relationship, then the impression that you give to your client is quite mercenary.
Give me more money, please.
It almost sounds like is there an extension?
Yep.
Um, Whereas if you know that and you structure the relationship management inside the engagement so that you're meeting with your client to have conversations both regarding the activity and regarding the relationship separately, then you will perpetuate. And it's the clients that I've delivered that successfully to have extended into, 5, 6, 7 year clients. The clients that I've dropped into pure execution mode, 6 months to a year. So
Hmm.
there's definitely that aspect of it. There's also a recognition, and I don't dislike, I don't have a deep rooted hatred for day rate work. It's easy for me to throw stones at it. What I would say is this: if your default model is day rate, it will always be a challenge for you to scale beyond 2 or 3 clients. Because
Yep.
what happens is you sell chunks of time. You sold Monday and Tuesday to client one, and you sold Friday to client two, and now you've got that awkward bit in the middle that nobody seems to want. That's a fragility of the day rate model. The other side of the day rate model is if somebody says to me, "Oh, round number, I'm £1,000 a day." Mentally, I've already thought to myself, well, the most you can earn per month is 25K.
Yep.
Period. Unless you
Yep.
are dishonest. And for those that are thinking, well, they don't really know where I am and what I'm doing, it will burn you to the ground sooner or later. It's not
Yeah.
a, it's
Don't do
not,
that.
it's
Live
not a,
your life with integrity is not a bad
yeah,
starting place, is it? Yeah,
yeah.
completely.
If you're going to play that game, what I can tell you, because I've seen too many people do it, is it will eat away at you more than it eats away at them. And you'll just
Yep.
end up hating the business that you've created. And so when I think about sustainable consulting practices, you have to create opportunity where there's a blend of different things going on. So yeah, it's fine. Have some day rate work if that's your initial backbone. But look at the discovery work, look at the execution work, look at the retained advisory work. Because if you can get a blend of all of those happening, then there's your magnification in terms of revenue generation. I could easily sit with maybe 2 retained CTO gigs running side by side and not break 30-40% of my capacity. So I've now still got capacity to go and do discoveries. And as we've already said, discoveries lead to future client. So that's great, but it also creates revenue in its own right. or maybe I'll do some retained advisory, maybe I'll do some leadership coaching, sits at the top line. So in my busiest years, I would say it wasn't uncommon for me to be working with 4 or 5 clients in parallel. And because I
But
was
but genuinely and honestly, you're not tricking anyone or double timing.
no,
Yeah.
no, I was always quite open and honest with my clients in respect of you're not my only client, you're not my only obligation. And on top of that, I also have a business to run. And so it's funny, I when I built the consulting practice properly, I built it from the bottom up. And so I looked at
Hmm.
it and went, this is my red line. The moment I stop doing this stuff, I'm creating a future problem. And this stuff being, the networking, the visibility, the outreach, all the stuff that we talk about in the program. That is my foundation. And if I'm not doing it, then I'm going to have a problem. Which means I never had 100% to give away in the first place. I probably had 80%.
Yep. Yep.
The 80% I targeted. I wanted X% of my book to be based on execution work, fixed price execution. I wanted X% of my work to be retained because that's long term relationship pieces. And the gap that was left was my discovery window. And that's exactly how I built it up.
And it sounds very much like even a sports person, right? You see a sports person on stage for an hour,
Mhm.
and that almost is like the work that the consultant is doing. But you know that with a sports person, there's so much more below the surface in terms of training and diet and nutrition and rest and all the other things which go into making them really, really perform very well at the highest level. And those sports people who do all of that background work become much more successful sports people. And I'm seeing a lot of analogy there, a lot of similarities between that and a consultant. If you just focus very much on the performance part of it and forget all of the training and the background and the generation and the running the business, your performing part will not be as successful.
I genuinely, Jeremy, I was so naive when I came into this industry. I genuinely believed that my skills would sell themselves, that I didn't need all this peripheral nonsense. And I got
Hmm.
early referrals. I remember speaking to my wife and going, I don't see what the fuss is about. I so and so phoned me. They want me to go do some work. And I literally put the phone down to them and such phoned me and they want me to do some work. I don't see what the fuss is about until that
Sounds easy,
stopped.
Dan.
Oh, walk in the
Sounds
park.
very easy. Yeah.
The truth of the matter, sales, marketing, pipeline management, revenue monitoring and generation, relationship management, all the bits that sit around the outside of the great thing that you do,
Hmm.
the great thing that you do becomes absolutely irrelevant if you can't successfully execute the big picture. And
Exactly.
when I speak to people now, the vast majority of people that I speak to, that's their point of realization. They go, you know what, I'm a fantastic CTO, marketeer, CFO, right the way across the board. It's the same narrative. I'm great at doing that. I just don't know how to position it. I don't know how to talk to people. I don't know how to create clients. There's a lot of there's a lot of bad perception. People had this internal narrative. Yeah, I don't want to do sales. And I said, why?
Hmm.
Sales is actually quite fun. No, sales is cringe. I don't want to reach out to people. I was like, that's because you've been exposed to bad sales. You've opened up LinkedIn in the morning and you've got 15 sales pitches in your inbox.
Yeah.
Terrible sales. What about if I could show you a version that didn't require you to go and do that? What if I could show you a version that was much more conversational? What if I could show you a version where you got to show people how good you are at what you do and they wanted to buy your services in return? Then do you dislike sales? Well, no, actually, that sounds like quite fun. So
Mm.
there's a lot of breaking down false truths, if you like. The content one we talked about, selling
Yeah.
we've talked about. There's a lot of psychological truths in there as well that I come across on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and that brings us into number six, which is the psychological side of it. And I'm actually surprised we haven't spoken about this a bit earlier because I would imagine that especially if you're a bit new and you've been relatively successful in your job and you say, okay, now I'm going to be a consultant, self-belief, confidence, understanding your worth and being able to present that well enough. Um, what does that look like for a consultant on a day-to-day basis? How important is that psychological side?
Massively, hugely. When I first started coaching people, in my heart of hearts, and it just shows, how much I've learned over the last 3 years. In my heart of hearts, I thought I'd be teaching people how to do stuff.
Hmm.
If I condense it all down, it's Dan teaches you how to do X.
How to be a CTO sort of thing, do you
How
mean?
to
Or
how to how to find and win clients as a fractional
right,
CTO,
right.
as an
Yep,
example.
yep.
But the truth, there is so much more that goes on, and most of it is fairly psychological. When you leave corporate life, you leave behind a title, a work history, an ego, a team, a community. You
A
literally
monthly paycheck that's
a
there.
monthly paycheck, certainty. That's
Hmm.
it. Even if we think that corporate life isn't that certain, it's not as certain as it used to be, but
Of course, of course.
it gives off an aura of certainty.
Yep.
And so you you literally tear yourself out of that environment and you launch yourself into your own home office. You pad down there in your pajamas on day one. You go, right, let's do
Look at
this.
me, I'm a consultant. Look,
Yes. And then it
made it.
then it dawns on you. Then
Yep.
you go, how do I know if the thing that I'm doing is actually going to work? Or how do I know if the
Hmm.
thing I'm doing is wanted? Or how do I know if people will take one look at this and think that I'm a big fat fake?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
there's the beginning of the unraveling spiral that happens. I guarantee every single consultant in their first year of business will hit imposter syndrome. They will hit negative self-talk. They will, without a system, without a structure, they will pivot, they will chop and change, they will create their own negative noise that is seen by other people. They will wonder whether this was the worst decision they've ever made because suddenly it feels like they're working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to create success. And they will, and it's a very human thing to say out loud, you will feel lonely, like truly lonely,
Yep.
because people outside of this room don't know what I do. When I was
They probably
consulting
don't
all the time,
care either, Dan, to be honest.
no,
They
not
don't care, do
really.
they? Like, they don't care about
No,
you, is what I'm trying to say. It's
no,
like, yeah, Dan, yeah, whatever.
no. And so solo, by its very nature, solopreneur, it can be a lonely existence. More dangerous without a point of validation. It's easy to make incorrect assumptions.
Yep.
Um, and so what I tried to create inside the fractional formula was not only education. I mean, education, I say it to everybody I ever speak to. There's nothing I say out loud that you couldn't research and find out for yourself.
Hmm.
Dare I
Hmm.
say it, ChatGPT, Perplexity, YouTube, LinkedIn, Google. Remember that search engine that we used to use?
Yeah, I remember that.
All of that knowledge is there to be found. How to apply it and how to do it, that's a slightly different thing. But the bigger part for me is twofold. Number one, having somebody that has walked along that path and knows where all the demons are and
Yep.
can get you through there cleanly with support. Somebody that can keep you accountable, because when you are solo, it's easy to chase shiny objects. I'm going to build a website today. I'm designing a logo. I'm living the dream. So having
Yep.
somebody that will keep you accountable. But on the second side, having a community of like-minded people that are all on that journey together, that's the real differentiator. That's the difference between perpetually nagging away at yourself versus reaching out to somebody in the same position and going, am I mad, or is it just me that feels like this? And those are the little micro conversations that I see every day of the week inside my community of people going, I woke up today with a real nervousness about
Hmm.
this ideal customer or about this product or service. Has anybody got some time just to jump on a call and have a chat about it? That's where I start to see the unlocking effect. What I would say to people listening, if you are already in that journey and you are already starting to feel the self doubt, a couple of quick points. As an employee, with a successful track record. So these are the people that become consultants, right? Is you've done your job for 10 to 15 years, you're an
Yep.
expert.
Yep.
As an employee, multiple times throughout your career, someone looked at you and thought you were the right person for the job. They provided you instant validation. You now have to carry that with you because you didn't become stupid the moment you left corporate life. All of your experience, all of your credibility carried. And if I'm brutally honest, most clients don't care where you got your experience from. They don't care whether your experience came from corporate, whether it came contract, perm, interim. All they care is that you are able to solve the problem they've got.
Comes back to exactly what you were talking about earlier on, right?
Yep.
Talk to me about my problem and solve my problem.
Precisely that. So
Yeah.
if you are sitting there at your desk wondering what the hell to do, or wondering whether whether it's gonna work or whether it's not gonna work, you have to find a way of ironing that noise out. For me, remember way back when, I remember reading a book called Chimp Paradox by
Got it.
Professor
Love it. Great book.
right,
Professor Bright Stephen Cox or something. Yep.
Stephen
Got it. I've got
Peters.
it right. Got it right here. Yep. There we go. The Chimp
I,
Paradox.
I remember reading
Phenomenal
that
book.
and I remember it making more sense than I was prepared for it to make.
Yep.
The negative self-talk is the chimp. It has a job to do. What I learned to do in my own, and this sounds really fluffy and sitting on a cloud saying but what I actually learned to do was have a conversation with that. You know, when I
Yeah.
hear
That's the
when
thing that you have to give it a name, don't you? You give your monkey a name, and then
yeah,
when it starts to play up, you
I've got
talk to it.
it's funny. There's one of my clients that will see this and he'll have a go at me later. But I have a Dave in here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think mine was called Dave at one point. Yeah. Okay.
I have to be careful because every time I use Dave as a negative influence, my client Dave has a moan at me. It's like you're really
Yeah.
anti-Davids. But
Yeah.
I used to speak back to it. Just go, look, I hear you, I understand your concern, but what you're saying to me is not based on reality, it's based on fear.
Yep.
And here's my evidence to counter it. So let's park that problem and let's refocus on what's good. And I do that I become in a strange sort of way, I become that person for my clients when they come to me and say, "Oh, a
Yeah.
little bit nervous about this," and I go, "Let's just unpack it. How much of your nerves is based in reality? How much of it's based on fear of the unknown? How much of it is completely made up? You know what we used to tell the kids as the what if monster. Let's just turn that around. What if it does succeed? What if it is the biggest problem your client's got? What if it is in demand? What if you are able to sell?" And having watched, I've worked with pushing up to 150 plus people now. The first time one of my clients achieves success, the first time somebody reaches out to them and says, "I want to talk to you because you do the thing that we're really struggling with." The first time they sign on the dotted line, they say, "Actually, hey, Dan, I've won a client. I'm
Hmm.
actually doing this. I created that client, not it was a referral, not it was a recruitment piece.
I
I
made
re
it happen.
I reached out to them. I spoke to them about the thing that I knew they were suffering with. It resonated. We jumped on a call and now I'm working with them. Suddenly that chimp shuts right up.
Yeah.
It just wanders off,
Yeah.
disinterested to go and find something else to worry about. And so for me, the psychology of working on your own, the psychology of starting a new venture, look, it's supposed to feel scary. You're
Yeah.
walking into a territory that you don't yet understand. It's supposed to become a train of thought. That's how you succeed. You create focus based on that train of thought. If it was really easy, corporate life wouldn't exist. We'd have all jumped ship 10, 15, 20 years ago.
I've had a string of guests on this show
Mhm.
of all sorts, from really sort of successful people who've been in senior roles through to, all sorts of people. And very surprisingly, the thing that pops up in almost every episode is some version of imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
And what's quite evident to me, and I think I know this anyway, but it's just a human condition. It's
Yep.
your check and balance. It's from the cave days of, do you want to go outside the cave to try and catch some food because a bear might eat you?
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening. And if this book here is a great book, and
Yep.
it doesn't apply just to people who want to become a consultant. It applies to people who've got a job and everything. So I
It
would
actually
say.
applies inside families as well, just for the record.
Everything, everything.
We look at some things and we go, it's inert, it's safe, and we don't need to worry. We look at other things and it's, oh my God, it's scary and it's terrifying. So it's very, very unpredictable. And that's why the psychology in terms of imposter syndrome, it bubbles up out of nowhere. And
Yeah.
I've I've met people that over the course of a week, they start and they're like, this is going to be amazing and everything's fantastic. And then at the end of week one, they're like, Dan, is it
Yeah, what
supposed to
went wrong?
is it
Yeah.
supposed to feel like this? And I go, it does if you don't talk about it. And
Yeah.
that's my best advice is just find someone. I look for me, find me on LinkedIn, come and have a chat. And it's not about me selling anything to you. If you're feeling like that, come and have a chat. I talk
Yeah.
to people every day of the week about it, and I'm able to offer insight as to why you're feeling the way you're feeling, and how, more importantly, how to overcome it and beat it.
And it also occurs to me that you and me are different people. I could be terrified of something which totally excites and thrills you,
Hmm.
and vice versa. And also today, as you've just described, I might be really excited about this thing, but tomorrow I'm terrified of it. And that's just a human condition. So we've been through such a lot of material here today, Dan, and it's really obvious to me that if somebody is already in a consultancy position or wants to get into that position and they want to do it successfully, and I know that you work with people one on one, you've got a program that people can engage with, but you've also got a free resource called your everything page. Would you mind just talking through a little bit about what that page is? And if somebody chooses to engage with you, what can they expect in terms of what does your program look like, but also what's in it for them?
Okay. So the everything page is it's got a bit of a story behind it. I've created a lot of materials over 5 years for fractionals and for consultants coming into the industry, and showing them how to get success and how to create success consistently. The problem with those materials is every time you create something new, everything you create before seems to disappear. You lose interest in promoting it. And then I realized that actually it doesn't lose relevance. It's all still very relevant stuff. For people that have only just met me and haven't been on this journey with me over 5 years. And so I created the everything page to hold every podcast, every webinar, every playbook, every assessment, every guide. It's there. It's not paywalled. Anybody's welcome to go and get it, um, and see how I think about the consulting landscape and how to get ahead in it. In terms of the program, look, I remember the day I said I was going into coaching. I remember talking to my wife and saying, I don't like coaches and I don't like programs, but here I am coaching people. The challenge for me right now is the coaching industry has become saturated with video on demand, self-paced content. The problem that presents for me personally is I don't believe it answers the question. It doesn't solve the problem. And so when I created the fractional formula, what I wanted was an environment that gave people the thing they need. Let's be honest, what most people need is business. Create revenue for your business. Let's disregard all of the other stuff around the outside. That's what people are
Yep.
fixated on, and quite rightly. For some people, that means generating leads. For some people, it means closing leads properly. For some people, it's the whole shebang, shoot match end to end. And so when I created the 10-week program, what I was saying to people, and I still say today, is it's intensive. It's you and me working together for 10 weeks, building this thing for real, to the point where my assumption, my gut instinct is you'll land your first client inside 10 weeks. That's my guarantee. In terms of what does it feel like, I wanted it to feel like a business partnership until you didn't need a business partner. And so I give away unlimited one-to-one time inside the program to my clients. They work with me for those 10 weeks. If they haven't achieved success at 10 weeks, we just keep going. And so for me, I know just as much about my clients and what they're trying to achieve and where they are on that journey as they do. And that eradicates all of that psychological side that we spoke about a little while ago. So that's the program. But look, in spirit of transparency, my program and consulting as a landscape is not for everybody. And so there is no buy it now option on this. It's not a case of just go to a website, click a button, pay some money. I meet with every single one of my prospective clients for at least 30 minutes before they get anywhere near the program. And what I'm trying to ascertain is, where are you on your journey? What's your risk appetite? What's your stability? What's your likelihood of success in this environment? And if I don't think it's for you, I will be brutally honest with you and say, look, I don't think this is the landscape that you want to operate in, and this is why. So at the very least, you've had the conversation. If I do think it is for you, and if I do think that you are somebody that I can help, then that's a different conversation altogether. But that journey always begins with a 30-minute consultation with me, which is totally free of charge. There is an option on the everything page to book that 30-minute consultation if people want to do it. And there we go.
Amazing. Dan, thank you so much indeed for the time you've taken today, but also in all of the preparation. Um, I know myself, you reach a certain point in your life where people say to you, why do you become a consultant? And you kind of go, well, what does that even mean? I don't know. I don't know I wouldn't know where to start. What am I good at? Who would I contact? Who's going to hire me? There's so many uncertainties, but there's this sort of overarching almost desire and belief that it's got to be easy. And yeah, let's just go be a consultant and earn loads of money and be constantly busy and constantly in demand. But when you actually then stop and think about it, that's kind of unrealistic. You do need an operating system. You are a business and you need to be able to run
Yep.
yourself as a business in order that you can get that, the bit of success that you're looking for. So it's been really, really eye opening talking to you. And again, I want to say, um, that nothing you have said is sort of eye shattering and, oh my God, that's amazing. I've never heard that before. It's
Oh,
really pragmatic, sensible advice. And if anybody who is listening or watching is there or there or thereabouts and wants to become successful, I reckon they should give you a call. I reckon they should go look at your page and have that conversation and see where it leads.
that there was a very good reason that my business was branded No Nonsense Leadership. There is no secret sauce for anybody listening in thinking about consulting. I'm going to do this as quick as I possibly can. Freelance, expert, consultant, on demand, as a service, fractional, portfolio, and NED, they are basically one and the same thing. It's packaging up your N years worth of experience into a product or service that somebody else needs. There is no
Yeah.
secret sauce. There is no magic. There is no hack. There is just building the business right and executing those micro habits on a daily basis to the point of success. The people that I see today that are super successful, when you peel away the layers of their business, that's all they're doing. And it
Yeah.
really doesn't matter, whilst this whole session has been in the context of solopreneur. If I look at, because I learned this in consulting businesses, if I look at bigger consultancies and if I look at bigger businesses, they're doing exactly the same thing. There's just more people doing it.
Yeah.
There you go. If
Amazing.
anybody's listening, they do want to chat. Promise I'm not going to try and sell you anything. Just come and have a chat with me. More than happy to do so. You can find me on LinkedIn or you can find my Calendly link on the everything page.
Yep. And also, if you go to buildyouredge.org/downloads, there will be a page there which has got a lot of material from this episode, load of links, ways that you can look at what Dan's been talking about. You can reach out to Dan. And of course, we're going to put all of the notes from this show in there as well. So you can just have a good old look at that. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough to get you off and running.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's good for you. So, Dan, thank you so much indeed again for everything you've done for the show. Thank you for coming on. If you've been watching or listening, thank you for that. Please go to buildyouredge.org/downloads. Go find out more about Dan and what he offers. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. It's been amazing.
Thank you.